neutral stand that India has taken in this 3-year-long war? And is there any role now in this direct negotiation between Putin and Trump, where the Ukrainians are feeling left out, the Europeans are feeling left out? Is there any role that India can play to bring about peace in this 3-year-long war?
रशिया के साथ भी घनिष्ठ संबंध है, यूक्रेन के साथ भी घनिष्ठ संबंध है। मैं राष्ट्रपति पुतिन के सामने बैठ करके मीडिया को कह सकता हूं कि युद्ध का समय नहीं है, और मैं जेलेंस्की को भी एक मित्र भाव से उनको भी कहता हूं कि भाई, दुनिया कितनी ही आपके साथ खड़ी क्यों न हो जाए, युद्ध भूमि में कभी भी परिणाम नहीं निकलने वाला है। परिणाम तो टेबल पर ही निकलने वाला है, और टेबल पे परिणाम तब निकलेगा जब उस टेबल पर यूक्रेन और रशिया दोनों मौजूद होंगे। पूरी दुनिया यूक्रेन के साथ बैठ करके कितनी माथापच्ची कर ले, उसे परिणाम नहीं आता है। दोनों पक्षों का होना जरूरी है। और शुरू में समझा नहीं पा रहा था, लेकिन आज जो इस प्रकार का वातावरण बना है, उससे मुझे लगता है कि अब रशिया, यूक्रेन, मैं आशावादी हूं कि बहुत उन्होंने खुद ने तो गंवाया है, दुनिया का बहुत नुकसान हुआ है। ग्लोबल साउथ को सबसे ज्यादा नुकसान हुआ है। पूरे विश्व में फूड, फ्यूल एंड फर्टिलाइजर उसका संकट रहा है। तो पूरा विश्व चाहता है जल्दी से जल्दी शांति हो, और मैं हमेशा कहता हूं कि मैं शांति के पक्ष में हूं। मैं न्यूट्रल नहीं हूं, मैं शांति के पक्ष, मेरा एक पक्ष है और मैं उसके लिए प्रयत्नरत हूं।
We are very grateful for India's involvement. We are very happy that Prime Minister Modi is doing that. We had a fantastic visit of Prime Minister last year. We signed a comprehensive strategic agreement. We signed an action plan to implement it. We appreciate the fact that Prime Minister Modi, at the early stages of the war, did persuade Mr. Putin not to try to use tactical nuclear weapons. He made a call to President Putin. We also want peace. Nobody wants war. This is, but we want peace that would be secure and stable. We don't want peace that would be a temporary ceasefire, which results in 3 years later in a major war. Okay. So we support we support peace efforts that will secure stable and sustainable peace in Ukraine. And we are very grateful to Prime Minister Modi for his involvement.
All right, I just want to show you these live pictures that are coming from Gurudwara Rakabganj, which is right in the heart of Delhi, a very, very popular Gurudwara for the Sikh community. Prime Minister Modi and the New Zealand Prime Minister Christopher Luxon are there at Rakabganj offering the seva. They've both visited jointly at Gurudwara Rakabganj. This is important in the context of the entire Khalistan push that's happening in some of the diaspora communities in some of these countries, more prominently in Canada, in some parts of the US, in the UK. New Zealand, not so much so, but New Zealand's importance is in the fact that it's also part of the Five Eyes intelligence sharing arrangement along with the United States, Canada and Britain and Australia. So therefore, Prime Minister Modi and the New Zealand Prime Minister, who's here as the chief guest for the Raisina Dialogue, visiting Gurudwara Rakabganj, a very holy shrine for the Sikh community right in the heart of the national capital. You can see Manjinder Sissa there as well. He is a minister in the Delhi government. Them going to Gurudwara Rakabganj sends out a very strong signal that India is on the side of the Sikhs, and it wants foreign governments, particularly governments where there is a large proportion of the Sikh diaspora and where there is this Khalistan sort of ugly head rearing itself every once in a while, those governments to take decisive action against those elements. This does send out a strong message. But I want to come back to the focus that we've had here on Brass Tacks at the top of the show, and that is this whole push for a ceasefire in the Ukraine-Russia war. It could get a fresh impetus as early as later this week. In the next 24 hours or so, President Donald Trump of the US is expected to speak to Vladimir Putin of Russia on the phone Tuesday. Trump has confirmed that the call could happen as early as Tuesday. He was speaking to reporters on board Air Force One during a late over weekend. So the question then is, will Putin agree to get on board? Because remember, since last week, since Ukraine and the US announced a 30-day ceasefire, Putin has not warmed up to that idea. He's been very lukewarm to this whole idea of a 30-day ceasefire. What will it take for Putin to agree? Yes, there would be huge economic relief if there's a pause in Western sanctions, or at least there is a lack of threat of the Western sanctions eating into the Russian economy. It could also frame Russia as a peacemaker, not an impediment to peace. A 30-day pause would also allow much-needed replenishment of exhausted Russian troops. In fact, the casualties on either side, both the Russian and the Ukrainian side, are estimated to be together over 1 million. Historically, Putin has tied any ceasefire agreement to several non-negotiable demands. These are reasons why he is not willing to play ball as far as the ceasefire is concerned. The Kremlin believes that any pause in the war could actually ensure the loss of momentum to Russian soldiers, particularly the gains that they've made in Kursk in the last few weeks. The pro-war factions in Moscow may also view a ceasefire as a betrayal by Putin. There's also a trust deficit. There were ceasefire attempts that happened in 2014 when Putin annexed Crimea, in 2015 as well. All of that collapsed over Russian violations to the ceasefire agreement, the terms and conditions of the ceasefire agreement. But this big question of whether India has a role in these direct negotiations between the US and Russia as they try to hammer out a peace in Ukraine and try and put some kind of a pause to that war. Let me now go across to Professor Brahmacharani, strategic affairs expert who's joining us. So the Deputy Foreign Minister of Poland making this revelation that in the early days of the war, Prime Minister Modi persuaded President Putin not to use tactical nuclear weapons. Now the question is, with this growing impetus for some kind of a ceasefire, some kind of a pause to the ongoing hostilities, will Vladimir Putin agree to a ceasefire? Has the threat of tactical nukes now receded? And the big question is, why is he so lukewarm to the idea of a 30-day ceasefire?
Russia has had the momentum on the battlefield since the beginning of the war. It captured a large slice of Ukraine in the first few weeks of the war. When a side has momentum in its favor, it has no reason to use nuclear weapons. What would Russia achieve by using tactical nuclear weapons in Ukraine against Ukrainian forces? Because that will, far from giving Russia any military advantage, would have triggered an international backlash against Russia. So we have to take any such statement, especially coming from a Polish official, because Poland, we should not forget, is probably the most hardline country in Europe in relation to Russia.
Correct.
So we shouldn't be taking Polish statements at their face value. The thing is that today, about 1/5 of Ukraine is under Russian occupation.
Yeah.
Russia has no intention of rolling back its occupation. The big question that the US under Trump faces is how they can actually broker an end to this war. I shouldn't use the word broker because the US is directly involved in the conflict, but how they can bring an end to the war, given the fact that Russia has the military advantage and it's unlikely to accept a temporary ceasefire. So this is going to be a complex process to negotiate an end to the war. The end to the war will have to be on the basis of securing peace that's enduring and acceptable to all sides.
All right. Professor Chalani, I'm going to come back to you in just 1 second for another part of that podcast, which the Prime Minister gave to Lex Friedman, where he also spoke about the China factor, and he was candid in his assessment that all is not well in the relationship between Beijing and Delhi. In fact, the Prime Minister said when you have two big powers side by side, both of them growing powers, one the number 2 economy in the world, the other the number 5 economy in the world, some differences will persist. And that is okay to have healthy competition, but that healthy competition should not descend into some kind of conflict. Now, this statement seems conciliatory, particularly after 5 years of almost escalated tensions at the line of actual control. Remember the Galwan incident that happened in 2020. So for a good 5 years, there were heightened deployments from both sides on the line of actual control. Eventually, in October of last year, there was a disengagement process that concluded in all the friction points. But the bigger question is, can things ever go back to being normal, pre-status quo ante 2020 April, when the whole status quo got changed unilaterally by Beijing? Can it go back to a pre-2020 April position between Beijing and Delhi? Let's first listen to what the Prime Minister said, and then I'll go back to Professor Chalani.
और मैं मानता हूं कि इतने सशक्त संबंध रहे, इतने गहन सांस्कृतिक संबंध रहे, और पहले की सदियों में कोई हमारे बीच में संघर्ष का इतिहास नहीं मिलता है। हमेशा एक दूसरे से सीखना, एक दूसरे को जानने का ही रहा है। और बुद्ध का प्रभाव किसी जमाने में तो चाइना में काफी था, और वो यहीं से ही वो विचार गया था। हम भविष्य में भी इन संबंधों को ऐसे ही मजबूत रहना चाहिए, कंटिन्यू रहना चाहिए। ये हमारा जहाँ तक डिफरेंसेस तो होते हैं, दो पड़ोसी देश होते हैं तो कुछ ना कुछ तो होता है। ऑकेजनल डिसएग्रीमेंट भी बहुत स्वाभाविक है, कोई ऐसा तो हर चीज नहीं होता, एक परिवार में भी रहता है। लेकिन हमारी कोशिश है कि हमारे जो डिफरेंसेस हैं डिस्प्यूट में ना बदले, उस दिशा में हमारा प्रयास रहता है। उसी प्रकार से हम डिस्कॉर्ड नहीं, डायलॉग, इसी पर बात कर बल देते हैं, तभी जाकर के एक स्टेबल कोऑपरेटिव रिलेशनशिप और दोनों ही देशों के लिए बेस्ट इंटरेस्ट में है।
All right, I want to go back to Professor Chalani, a strategic affairs expert. So, the Prime Minister giving a very pragmatic but very candid approach to ties between Beijing and Delhi. Clearly, what happened over the last 5 years, first with Galwan and then subsequently, the effort to try and disengage, has, altered the relationship, has deeply affected the relationship. But did you see or notice a conciliatory approach towards the relationship with China? And can India and China ever go back to a pre-Galwan situation or a pre-Galwan kind of status quo ante as it existed before?
You're right. It's a bit of a thaw. It's not a real thaw, but a bit of a thaw. The standoff has not ended. There have been some efforts to diffuse border tensions. In certain areas, the so-called friction points have been resolved, but the Chinese are still deploying large numbers of forces along the India frontier as if they are prepared for war. This is not a normal situation. What Mr. Modi does not talk about in that podcast is that just the way Vajpayee publicly bemoaned that his bus to Lahore got hijacked and taken to Kargil. Similarly, Modi got stabbed in the back by Xi Jinping after seeking to befriend him. Remember, Modi met with Xi Jinping 18 times. So one has to take the larger context. We've seen repeatedly Indian prime ministers reposing trust in foreign adversaries, China or Pakistan, and then seeking to blame the adversary rather themselves for the trust that they reposed that for. The fact is that the peace effort by Modi, it was I wouldn't criticize the peace effort, but the peace that he sought to make with China created this opportunity for China to encroach on Indian lands, and I'm talking about critical borderlands in Ladakh.
All right, Professor Chalani, thank you very much for joining us and putting that into perspective. I want to move on to some domestic stories. The pre-poll guarantees that were credited for the Congress's win, whether in Himachal Pradesh, in Telangana, in Karnataka, now seem to be plunging these states, respectively, into a bit of a financial crisis. In fact, last week, Telangana Chief Minister Revanth Reddy had announced a delay in payment of salaries to ASHA workers and Anganwadi workers. Today, the Himachal Pradesh Chief Minister Sukhwinder Sukhu presented the budget, and he stressed on the need for a self-reliant Himachal Pradesh while addressing the state's financial challenges. In Karnataka, the state's liabilities are up by 15%. The government is now forced to borrow more to fund the guarantees as well as infrastructure projects. All three Congress-ruled states now seem to blame their predecessors, but is that argument valid? Let's first listen in to some of these sound bites from these leaders of various states on how some of these guarantee programs are literally bankrupting their respective state treasuries.
ప్రతి నెల మొదటి తారీఖు నాడు జీతాలు ఇవ్వడానికే తలప్రాణం తోకొకొస్తుంది. మా ప్రభుత్వ ఉద్యోగులకు నేను ఇక్కడ నుంచి విజ్ఞప్తి చేస్తున్నా, నెల నెల మొదటి తారీఖు నాడు జీతాలు తీసుకొని మనం ప్రభుత్వానికి కొంత సేవలు అందిద్దాము. కొంత సమయం పడుతుంది. ఈరోజు ఏమాత్రం ఏం చేసుకున్నా ఈ వ్యవస్థ కూడా దెబ్బతింటుంది. మన మొదటి తారీఖు నాడు జీతాలు ఇవ్వడానికి రిజర్వ్ బ్యాంకు దగ్గర అప్పుడప్పుడు చేబదులు అంటారు కదా అధ్యక్ష, ఊర్లలో అంటాం కదా, బ్యాంకు లోను షూరిటీస్ కాకుండా చేబదులు మళ్ళీ ఇస్తాం. 4,000 కోట్ల రూపాయలు చేబదులు చేసి ఫస్ట్ నాడు జీతాలు ఇచ్చిన అధ్యక్ష. రిజర్వ్ బ్యాంకును ఇంకో 4-5 రోజులలో నీకు సర్దుతా నాకు వచ్చేదాన్ని బట్టి చేబదులు అని రిజర్వ్ బ్యాంకులో 4,000 కోట్ల రూపాయలు తెచ్చుకొని ప్రభుత్వ ఉద్యోగులకు మొదటి తారీఖు నాడు జీతాలు ఇచ్చిన అధ్యక్ష. అందుకే దయచేసి మా ప్రభుత్వ ఉద్యోగులకి ప్రభుత్వం మీది అన్ని లెక్కలు మీ ముందరనే పెడతా. ఏది ఎట్లా పంచుదామో చెప్పండి, ఏది ఆపుదాం, ఏది పంచుదాం.
All right, let's try and put this to the test, because the fund crunch seems to be a recurring pattern. And may I say, not just in Congress-ruled states, but also in BJP-ruled states. But let's take a look at the Congress-ruled states first. In Himachal Pradesh, for example, the outstanding liabilities of the state stand at almost half the entire gross state domestic product, the GSDP. 44.2% of the GSDP of the state of Himachal Pradesh, that's almost 95,000 crores, is just the total outstanding debt. The net interest that they are paying every year on this debt is to the tune of 5,465 crores. In fact, Himachal Pradesh Chief Minister Sukhwinder Sukhu has claimed that 70% of the borrowed loans are being used simply to repay the debt. And in the wake of the spiraling financial crisis there in the state, the government has even announced a hike in prices of cow and buffalo milk, which of course will be transferred to the consumers, because ultimately the consumers have to pay for milk. In Karnataka, which is one of the top 5 highest GSDP states in the country, highest tax-paying states in the country, the outstanding liabilities in the state are almost a quarter of the total economic output of the state. The GSDP of the state, 22.7% of the GSDP, which is estimated to be about 5 lakh crores, is the total liabilities of the state. The net interest payment alone every year, just paying interest on those liabilities, is at over 33,000 crores. The allocation for the 5 guarantees, which the Congress won the elections basis back in 2023, the total allocation for those guarantees has been reduced this year as well. It was reduced last year, it's been reduced this year as well. And where it all started in the state of Telangana, the outstanding liabilities account for again more than a quarter of the total state GSDP. 27.8% of the state's GSDP. It puts the total outstanding liabilities at over 3 lakh crores and the net interest payment at over 22,000 crores.
The Chief Minister is lying blatantly on the floor of the House. He has taken 1,58,000 crores of loan, and God knows what happened to the money. We believe 20% commission has evaporated some of it, and they are utterly failing in managing the budget of the state.
Revanth Reddy has accepted that they have to defer the payments to ASHA workers, to Anganwadi workers. This shows the financial doldrum Telangana has gone into ever since Congress has taken over. It shows that the Khatakat model makes big guarantee promises but does not deliver.
All right, let me go across to a straight face-off between BJP and Congress on this. Nagendra Rangappa is spokesperson of the Karnataka BJP. Bhavya Narasimhamurthy, spokesperson of the Congress. Bhavya, let me start with you first. Let's start with the state of Karnataka itself. Telangana, we were talking about it, but outstanding liabilities in the state of Karnataka is almost a quarter of the state's GSDP. It's 22.7% of the GSDP of the state. The total outstanding liabilities is just under 6 lakh crores, and the net interest payment on this alone is 33,000 crores. This is one of the states that used to be economically, progressive and economically revenue surplus. Today is in deep, deep debt because of these guarantees.
Blaming guarantees for this particular, financial crunch Maybe guarantee is also a reason, but not the main reason, because this is not just the case of Congress ruled states. There are BJP ruled states also complaining about the fund crunch, right?
Yeah.
So guarantees are something, they are social welfare schemes, and we had promised it, and it is actually giving very good results. Last year, Karnataka was the second highest in GST collections. So, of course, there will be, but if we have the right chief ministers to handle things, and our chief minister, because you're speaking about Karnataka, he has presented 16 budgets so far, and every time he was successful in implementing. He's been a very one of them in the sense, after Devraj Aras, he's the only chief minister who has completed 5 years term successfully, implementing every promise that he had promised in the previous term, and even this time he is doing that.
No, but
of
Bhavya,
course,
it's
they
coming
will
at
be
the cost
managing
of
the whole
what?
thing,
The cost
and
of increasing
exactly,
milk,
let me
increasing
please
government
finish.
hospital fees,
Yes,
increasing
yes,
bus
yes.
charges.
So you mean
I mean,
to say,
it's not like ordinary people have not had to, bear the brunt of this.
so the thing is, that's exactly why we rose the tax devolution problem. The injustice our state is facing because of, the amount they are giving us. If we are given our share justly, then I don't think we will be facing all this cash crunch.
Okay,
In
let me
fact,
ask
even in
Mr.
the
Narendra
GST
Rangappa of the BJP.
compensation, we were not given
Mr.
what
Rangappa,
was suggested.
it's one thing to say only Congress ruled states are bleeding themselves dry, but look at Maharashtra, top ranked economy in the country, the state that gives the highest taxes. Maharashtra's state budget is 7 lakh crores. The total estimated debt of Maharashtra is 9.32 lakh crores. There's 2 lakh crores more liabilities than the state's budget. In Madhya Pradesh, again, at a time when Madhya Pradesh was praised for its agricultural growth, it was seeing double-digit agricultural growth when nationally agricultural growth was sluggish. Today, the situation is, in Madhya Pradesh, the state budget is 4.21 lakh crores. The estimated debt is 4.3 lakh crores. So it's not just a Congress problem. You're also promising the guarantees. In Maharashtra, for example, just recently, Mr. Fadnavis, the chief minister, has announced that the promise that they made to increase guarantees for women from 1,500 rupees to 2,100 rupees, they're putting that on hold because they can't find the money to increase it to 2,100 rupees. So this is not as much, this is as much a BJP problem as it is a Congress problem.
See, time and again we are repeating that we are not against any guarantees. But it should be scientifically distributed, and the design of the guarantee must be viable. We have proved time and again since the COVID times when we gave a vaccine free, then again we gave the food grains free for 80 crore people for more than 4 or 5 years now. Then we have given Kisan Samman Yojana for more than 6 years now. But did it deter the national GDP? No. It improved the quality of living and it increased the productivity of the person. That is what we are trying to implement in our rural states. Whereas in Karnataka, it is a totally populistic program.
No, but Mr. Rangappa, you can call it by different names. You call it, Griha Lakshmi in Karnataka, you call it Ladki Behan in Maharashtra. Ultimately, what is it? It's a freebie, right? You're giving money, you're giving Reddy to women voters in the state. Whether they do it in Karnataka or in Maharashtra, you're just, repackaging it, that's all.
Do it. Jaka, you should have enough resources to do it. You should not borrow money. Mr. Siddharth has borrowed 1,16,000 crores, which is the highest in the history of Karnataka, which has added up to become 7,64,000 crores of debt, where more than 30,000 crores have to be paid as a tax. To make up the guarantee money, is taxing the poor people of Karnataka by increasing the prices. Even the water prices is going to increase. Taxes are increased. Registration fees have increased. Revenue taxes have increased. So what are they doing?
No, so that's exactly what I asked Bhavya, so ultimately in the last 2 years, almost 2 years that the Karnataka government the Congress government has been there in Karnataka, milk prices have gone up, bus fares have gone up, property tax has gone up, registration costs have gone up, Government hospital OPD fees have gone up. I mean, I can't think of a service that has not gone up in the last 2 years, almost 2 years, because you're funding all these very, very costly guarantees.
No, coming to this hospital funds, like the fees which has gone up, it was due for the past 6 to 5 years, right? And it's a very minimum cost that was supposed to increase in the past 5-6 years, which had not happened. And it's not like that money is going to the government. It is going to the hospital administration there. The government hospitals, it is for the improvement of the service there. In fact, the health department have started a lot of revolutionary schemes, along with guarantees, like distribution of menstrual cups benefited from it. And let me
once again, let her finish. Let her finish. Sir, I'll come to you. Let her finish, please.
And when you speak about price rise, to always target guarantees, I don't think it's fair, because in every government there was price rise. In fact, there is no one who can match Prime Minister Narendra Modi, when it comes to price rise. No one can even compete with him. The LPG price, the petrol and diesel price, the way it shot up, like today petrol and diesel cost the same. There was a huge difference between the prices of petrol and diesel before. So, price rise happens in every government. Just because we are implementing guarantee doesn't mean this opposition keep targeting us, saying, there is price rise and all of this. Price rise is a normal phenomenon that happens in every government with time, with inflation.
Mr. Rangappa, the prices of commodities that the center controls, fuel prices, today it's less than $70 a barrel in the world markets. Why are we still paying 100 rupees at the petrol pump? Similarly, CPI inflation, for the longest time, RBI had said we wanted under 4%. Finally, I think the last data that came out was the first time it was under 4%. My point is that it's not like BJP has done a great job of combating inflation either.
See, we have not inflated the prices of gas and gasoline to give freebies to some section of the people and burden one section of the society. We have not done that. The gas prices and the oil prices are directly dependent upon the world crude oil price. It is a well-accepted fact. But the point of discussion here is, you are burdening a part of the society to help one part of the society, and you are burdening the society. That is not correct.
Okay. All right, we'll leave it at that. Mr. Rangappa and Bhavya, thanks for joining us. We'll see. Like I said, this can't be viewed purely from a political partisan lens, saying that this is just a Congress-ruled states problem or a BJP-ruled states problem. Everyone seems to have figured that this is the way to win votes. Promise Ladki Behan, promise the 2,500 rupees for women. Make the promise, then don't deliver it properly, and then say, of course, the state is broke, because ultimately the state will be broke if you're going on this sort of disbursement of freebies spree. Whether that's in BJP-ruled Maharashtra or Congress-ruled Karnataka, the story seems to be the same. Let's now move on to the other big story. The US Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, is in India. This is the third country that she is visiting as part of her first foreign visit since becoming the Director of National Intelligence. She met with Prime Minister Modi a short while ago. Prime Minister Modi presented Tulsi Gabbard with a vase of the Mahakumbh water from the Holy Sangam. She also met with Defence Minister Rajnath Singh earlier today, as well as National Security Advisor Ajit Doval. She also took part in an Intel Chiefs Conference that was hosted by New Delhi. After the tumultuous last few years under the previous Biden presidency, particularly on the Khalistan issue, where the feeling was that the Western countries, particularly Canada, the United States, and even Britain, had become a safe sanctuary for some of these extremist Khalistan elements, the new intel boss of the United States of America seems to be indicating that America is willing to turn a new page when it comes to this whole Khalistan issue and India's perceived grievance that America and Canada and Britain, to a great extent, were offering these safe havens or sanctuaries to these Khalistani elements to run riot. She's now indicated a willingness to move on, to look beyond that particular sour chapter. But the proof of the pudding has to be in the eating. because India has expressed concerns over some of these anti-India activities by Khalistani groups, particularly the Sikhs for Justice under Gurpant Singh Pannu, which is operating with aplomb both in the United States as well as in Canada. India has raised this issue specifically when Defense Minister Rajnath Singh and the US Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard met earlier today. Sources have also revealed during that meeting that Rajnath Singh requested the US administration to take strong action against SFJ as well as all other pro-Khalistan elements that are operating from American soil. According to an official statement, both leaders emphasized that strategic security remains a vital pillar of the comprehensive global strategic partnership between Washington and New Delhi. Both leaders have also explored avenues for collaboration in cutting-edge defense innovation as well as niche technologies, critical emerging technologies, etc. in that conversation that happened between Tulsi Gabbard and Rajnath Singh. Let's listen in to my colleague Akash, who was there on the sidelines of the meeting.
It was an important meeting between Indian Defense Minister Rajnath Singh and US Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard. Out of many issues that were deliberated in this meeting, sources say that Khalistani issue remains the highlight. Indian Defense Minister Rajnath Singh raised the issue of Khalistani extremists in front of Tulsi Gabbard and asked her to list organizations like Sikh for Justice as terrorist organizations. In fact, sources within the Ministry of Defense are telling us that how Indian side somewhere pointed out the Pakistani links of Sikh for Justice. In fact, in this meeting that lasted for 30 minutes, several other issues like maritime security, cooperation, intelligence sharing, and a number of other related issues were discussed, and both the sides concluded this meeting on a happy note, saying that they are ready to cooperate with each other.
But ultimately, whether or not the new Trump administration and whether the new DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, is willing to walk the talk depends entirely on whether America will cooperate with some of these names, high-profile gangsters and extremist elements who are there in the United States. In fact, Indian security agencies under the direction of the MHA, the Ministry of Home Affairs, had compiled a list of 12 gangsters who are based in the United States. They are facing all kinds of trial, all kinds of legal challenges there in the US. This list was shared with Washington when Prime Minister Modi went there recently back in February, on the 13th of February, when he met with President Trump. This list was shared with the US side, the US authorities. Who are the names in this list? It includes some prominent criminals like Anmol Bishnoi, for example, who is the younger brother of the notorious gangster Lawrence Bishnoi, who's in the Sabarmati jail. He's wanted in multiple cases. Anmol Bishnoi is wanted also in the firing case, the firing that happened outside Salman Khan's Bandra residence some months ago. So he's one of the main accused there. He was arrested recently in a fake documents case. He apparently entered the United States in an illegal fashion. And the question that needs to be asked to the new DNI is how come he's not being sent back because he's an illegal immigrant, just like the Trump administration has done with illegals wherever they come from. But his extradition is likely to be a long-drawn process. That's what we understand. He's not the only one. There's also Goldie Brar, again facing multiple charges in the United States. He's in a jail in the US right now, associated with significant organized crime networks here in India as well. He's been a declared terrorist under the UAPA, and he had claimed responsibility as the mastermind of the murder of Sidhu Moosewala, the very popular Punjabi pop artist. Meanwhile, India is also seeking the extradition of Dharmanjot Singh Kehlon, who is an alleged weapons supplier who played a crucial role in planning Moosewala's murder. Kehlon is said to be a key link between the Canada-based Bhabbar Khalsa International, the BKI, operative Lakbir Singh Landa, and the Lawrence Bishnoi gang. He's also suspected of smuggling weapons, explosives, and heroin into India. Then there is Amritpal Singh, alias Amrit Bal, a US-based operative of the Jaggu Bhagwanpuri gang. He's also wanted here in India. Authorities claim that he manages the gang's illegal activities in Punjab. He was involved in establishing terror modules in collaboration with Paramjit Singh Pomma back in 2023. Now, while this issue did not come up directly, at least in the meeting with Rajnath Singh, the US intelligence chief Tulsi Gabbard has reiterated that President Donald Trump is committed to defeating the threat of Islamist terrorism. She said wherever it happens, whether it is in India, whether it is in Syria, whether it is in any part of the world, President Trump wants to crush Islamist terror. A fight that she said that the United States was united with India on. Let's listen in to what Tulsi Gabbard said about the fight against terror.
Prime Minister Modi's visit to the White House. As you know, they are already good friends. It was a very great opportunity for them to share their joint vision for the U.S.-India partnership and the opportunity for us to continue to strengthen that partnership. So the meetings that I've had here with different Indian government officials and intelligence officials really is set on that foundation of how we can continue to integrate, how we can continue to strengthen our relationship. What I appreciate about President Trump and his approach and some comments that I heard Prime Minister Modi make recently is they are very practical and they are pragmatic and are looking to strike that balance that will allow us to hopefully prevent any kind of conflict. The goal, of course, that we all share is to achieve peace, to increase prosperity, and to ensure stability and security for both of our peoples, but in the region as well.
Meanwhile, fugitive Islamic preacher Zakir Naik, who is wanted here in India, met with former Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif and Punjab Chief Minister Maryam Nawaz at their residence in Revanth. The meeting, which was held at the Sharif family estate, has sparked a fresh controversy and concerns here in India. Naik continues to be a fugitive under law. He continues to evade extradition. He's wanted. There's a Red Corner Interpol notice against him. While no official statement has been put out by the former Pakistan Prime Minister's office or from the Punjab Chief Minister's office, the nature of these discussions, the timing of this meeting, where it happened, all of this has raised eyebrows. His visit to Pakistan follows growing diplomatic pressure from India for his extradition from Malaysia. Zakir Naik has been living in exile in Malaysia since 2016 after he fled from India. This meeting with the Sharifs come at a time when Mr. Naik appears to be gaining more visibility in Pakistan. Recently, the former Pakistani cricketer Mohammad Hafiz had met with Zakir Naik. He shared pictures on social media about that meeting. Back in October of last year, the Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif had met with Zakir Naik. During that meeting, the Prime Minister of Pakistan had lauded Zakir Naik, saying that he had personally benefited from his lectures. So why then is Pakistan at the very highest levels of government and powers outside of government who have great influence on the government, why are they hosting or playing host to this fugitive from Indian law? India has been pursuing legal action against Zakir Naik for a number of years now, with multiple charges, multiple cases filed against Zakir Naik, the controversial Islamic preacher. Indian authorities have accused Zakir Naik of spreading religious hatred and influencing youth towards extremism. His speeches have been linked to individuals involved in terror activities here in India. The Enforcement Directorate has charged him under the Prevention of Money Laundering Act, alleging that his foundation had received suspicious funds, some of which they claim were used for radical activities. Over 190 crores worth of assets linked to Zakir Naik have been attached as well. In 2016, the Indian government banned his foundation, the Islamic Research Foundation of IRF, saying that they were undertaking terror activities, giving a safe haven to terrorists. So under the anti-terror laws, under UAPA and other related laws, the IRF was in fact debarred, citing its role in promoting forced religious conversions and the funding of radical activities. Meanwhile, staying with stories emanating from Maharashtra, since Zakir Naik, his base was in Maharashtra, the controversy over the Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb's tombstone in Maharashtra is only escalating now. Hindu outfits are warning of a Babri-like situation if the tombstone of Aurangzeb, which is in what used to be Aurangabad, now Sambhaji Nagar, if that tombstone is not razed down to the ground. The Maharashtra Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis claims that the site cannot be razed down because it's an ASI protected monument. So therefore, if the government needs to raise it down, it has to go back to the Supreme Court and ask the Supreme Court to rule in favor of removing the ASI protections that have been given to this tombstone site. Following the announcement by various Hindu outfits like the VHP and Bajrang Dal, security has been heightened around Aurangzeb's tomb in Sambhaji Nagar. In fact, the Hindu groups have also warned of statewide agitations. The Maharashtra government has said that while the tomb cannot be razed down, there will be firm action against those who glorify the Mughal emperor and his deeds in the state. The demand, though, has triggered a big political controversy. There is pressure on the Maharashtra government to take legal means, to take legal recourse, go back to the courts and seek some kind of a reprieve whereby this tombstone monument is removed out of the protected lists of monuments that are governed by the Archaeological Survey of India.
आज हे ठीक आहे खरं म्हणजे त्या औरंग्याची कबर कशाला हवी, परंतु आपल्याला देखील कल्पना आहे की ASIने त्याला 50 वर्षापूर्वी संरक्षित म्हणून अशा प्रकारचं त्या ठिकाणी स्थळ म्हणून घोषित केलेलं आहे आणि म्हणून त्याचं संरक्षण देखील करायची जबाबदारी ही राज्य सरकारवर आणि केंद्र सरकारवर येऊन पडलेली आहे. काय दुर्दैव आहे, ज्या औरंग्याने आमच्या हजारो लोकांना मारलं त्याच्याच कबरीचं संरक्षण आम्हाला करावं लागतं. पण एक वचन तुम्हाला निश्चितपणे देतो, काहीही झालं तरी या महाराष्ट्रामध्ये औरंगजेबाच्या कबरीचं महिमा मंडन होऊ देणार नाही, त्याचं उदात्तीकरण होऊ देणार नाही. त्याचं उदात्तीकरण करण्याचा कोणी प्रयत्न केला तर तो प्रयत्न त्याच ठिकाणी चिरडून टाकण्याचं काम या आम्ही केल्याशिवाय राहणार नाही. हे वचन छत्रपती शिवरायांच्या या मंदिराच्या समोर आपल्या सर्वांना मी देतो.
All right, this is big breaking news. Ramachandra Rao, the former DGP rank officer in the Karnataka police, the father of Rania Rao, who is the actor who was apprehended at the Bengaluru airport a few weeks ago for gold smuggling. He has now been questioned. Remember, Ramachandra Rao was the DGP of the Karnataka State Housing Finance Development Corporation. He was sent on forced leave, compulsory leave, just a couple of days ago. He was today questioned by the inquiry committee that was set up by the state government under the additional chief secretary. He, of course, had distanced himself from his stepdaughter, Rania Rao, right after her arrest. Let me go across to Harish, who has more details on this. So the inquiry committee looking at the role, allegedly, of Ramachandra Rao, but what exactly are they trying to get at? Do they believe, is the fear or the concern that Rania Rao was misusing privileges that were extended to her by way of a personal security officer because of who her dad was and whether or not he had a role in this entire gold smuggling racket?
Yes, in fact, the diktat by the state government to this probe commission is very clear that they will look at the possible misuse of the protocol privileges at the airport and dereliction of duty by the state officers who've been posted within the airport, especially around the custom area. And with Rania Rao giving certain statements and the DRI, in fact, informing the special court that she had called Basuraju, Constable Basuraju, multiple times. Constable Basuraju also confessing to the DRI that she had called multiple times, and it was a routine practice for IPS officers, senior IPS officers, to seek protocol privileges for their family members. This committee had to call Ramachandra Rao to ascertain certain facts. What we believe is this entire questioning has gone on for more than an hour or so, and just a while ago it has been concluded. This committee is expected to produce the report in the next couple of days and submit it to the government because they were given a week's time, and all eyes towards this commission's report to find out how these protocol privileges were violated and if Mr. Rao had directly told officers at the airport to provide protocol privilege to his daughter.
All right, Harish, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. Harish with more details of the questioning of Ramachandra Rao, who is the father, the stepfather of Rania Rao, the actor who was apprehended as part of a massive gold smuggling racket at the Bengaluru airport. Now, I want to shift focus to another story from the Trump administration. After weeks of speculation, now the New York Times is first reporting the story that the Trump administration is gearing up to issue a sweeping series of travel restrictions. Dozens of countries that could be affected. If you're a resident or a citizen of any of these countries hoping to travel to the United States, you need to pay attention to this story. These restrictions are going to be far more sweeping compared to those that were imposed in Trump's previous term. In his first term, in fact, Trump had imposed restrictions on 7 countries, predominantly those were Muslim-majority countries. But this one could be much, much more than that. More than 40-odd countries could be affected in one way or the other. How does it affect you? I dig a little deeper. In recent days, the Trump administration has been considering a significant expansion of travel restrictions which can potentially affect citizens from 40-odd countries. This move was first reported by the New York Times. It involves categorizing countries into 3 separate lists: red, orange, and yellow, each with varying levels of travel restrictions. This proposal is part of a broader immigration enforcement initiative launched by President Donald Trump at the beginning of his second term. We will try and delve into the specifics of this proposed ban, the rationale for this ban, how it aligns with Trump's anti-immigration agenda, and its implications, particularly for student visas in the context of the recent actions against students at the Columbia University in New York. The proposed travel ban divides countries into three categories. The first is the red list. This includes countries who face an outright ban on traveling to the United States. None of the citizens having a passport of these countries will be able to enter America. The list of banned travelers include countries like Cuba, Iran, Libya, North Korea, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, Venezuela, Afghanistan, and Bhutan. Now, some have expressed surprise at why Bhutan is part of this list, not having any known terrorists or any troublesome elements who have migrated to the United States in recent times and who have had to be deported because of unlawful activities there. The second category is the orange list. Now, countries on this list will face restricted travel. They will have limited entry, allowed only after in-person interviews, and only for short-term non-immigrant visas. The orange list includes countries like Russia, Pakistan, Myanmar, Belarus, Haiti, Laos, Eritrea, Sierra Leone, South Sudan, and Turkmenistan. And finally, there is what is called the yellow list. This category consists of countries who will be given a 60-day notice to address specific security concerns. If any of these countries fails to comply, then travelers from these countries risk being moved to the orange or the red lists. The yellow list includes 22 countries, most of them from Africa and the Caribbean. There are countries like Angola, Antigua and Barbuda, Benin, Burkina Faso, Cambodia, Cameroon, to the Republic of Congo, even countries like St. Lucia, Vanuatu, and Zimbabwe. The rationale behind Trump's proposed ban is to enhance national security interests by identifying and also restricting travel from countries who have deficiencies when it comes to a vetting and screening process for who can get to travel to the United States. This aligns with Trump's broader strategy, which is to protect America from what he thinks are potential threats, including terrorism and the exploitation of immigration laws. This move is part of an executive order that was signed by Trump on his very first day in office on the 20th of January, which mandated enhanced security screenings for foreigners who are seeking entry into the United States. This draft proposal, which is now doing the rounds of the media, which could become an actuality in the next few weeks, is an enhanced measure from the executive order that he signed on the first day in office. During his first term, Trump implemented a travel ban targeting 7 majority Muslim countries. They were Iraq, Syria, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen. That ban in the first term faced significant legal challenges. Multiple courts turned it down. There was public backlash as well, but ultimately it was upheld by the US Supreme Court in 2018. That ban was subsequently revoked. When the next president came into office, Joe Biden, he described that travel ban as a stain on our national conscience. The proposed travel ban now is a key component of Trump's anti-immigration agenda, which he has emphasized throughout his political career, both in his first term and even more so now. Because in the second term, there seems to be a renewed urgency by Trump in cracking down on illegal immigration. Trump has appointed a new border czar in Tom Homan, who oversees the Department of Immigration, Communication and Enforcement, or ICE. In the last couple of months that Trump has been in office, ICE has overseen the deportation of thousands of illegals who entered the United States. They've been sent back either to their home countries or they've been kept in detainment facilities either in Guantanamo Bay or in Panama or in El Salvador. Trump has consistently argued that stricter immigration policies are necessary to safeguard America's national security and also to protect American jobs. This stand has been a central theme both in his campaigns when he was running for president and also it has become a central policy initiative once he's taken office. But that's not the only thing that Trump is cracking down on. Recently, the Trump administration has taken action against students at the Columbia University who were involved in pro-Palestinian protests last year. The Department of Homeland Security has arrested and detained several students. Prominent among them are Mahmoud Khalil and Leka Cordia. the Department of Homeland Security has cited violations of visa terms or even alleged support for terrorism. Incidentally, Mahmood is a green card holder and the first instance of a student who had a green card and has been held back for a political protest. Another student, Ranjani Srinivasan from India, had her visa revoked because of her involvement in similar protests at the Columbia University. She later self-deported to Canada before officers from DHS and ICE could reach her Columbia University apartment.
Within hours of taking the oath of office, I declared a national emergency on our southern border.
The rationale provided by the Trump administration is that these students have advocated for violence or terrorism or have indulged in anti-Semitic comments on campus, which is seen as a misuse of student visas.
Hearing to consider the nomination, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but.
Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said that advocating for such activities should result in the revocation of visa privileges. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has indicated that more student visas will be revoked in the coming days. All of this is part of efforts to identify individuals who should not have been allowed entry into the U.S. in the first place. Rubio's comments follow the detention of Mahmoud Khalil and reflect the administration's intent to further scrutinize and even revoke visas of those students who are involved in activities that the administration deems as inappropriate.
And so in the days to come, you should expect more visas will be revoked as we identify people that we should never have allowed in because they lied to us. When they said they were coming here to be students, they didn't say they were coming here to occupy university buildings and vandalize them and tear them apart and have campuses hostage. If they had told us that, we would never have given them a student visa.
The proposed travel ban on citizens from 43 countries is a significant development, a significant step forward in Trump's immigration policy, reflecting his ongoing efforts to restrict entry into the United States. The categorization of countries into red, orange, and yellow lists allows for a three-tier approach to travel restrictions. Some countries have got outright bans, some others have conditional entries. The rationale behind this policy aligns with Trump's broader anti-immigration agenda. He emphasizes the need to protect the United States from both the threats of losing American jobs and the threats to America's national security. The recent actions against Columbia University students also highlight the Trump administration's willingness to push the envelope when it comes to stricter immigration policies, even in cases that involve political activism and not necessarily a direct terror charge or terror threat. As these hard immigration policies continue to evolve, they are likely to remain a contentious issue. Many of this could be challenged in courts of law, which could put stays, and there could be international pressure as well to go easy on this long list of countries who have restricted entry into the United States.
You win.
Madam Director, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity
Thank you.
to speak with you.
It's great to see you.
This isn't the first time that you've been in India. You've come here before, but first time as Director of the National Intelligence. And we're looking forward to having you here and very happy that India is one of your first ports of call after you've assumed office. You've had your meetings with Mr. Doval and the other Intel czars. Can you tell us a little bit about the scope of intelligence sharing between India and the US?
Of course. Well, first of all, it's wonderful to be back in India. Really, the tone and the relationship with our new administration under President Trump and Prime Minister Modi was set during Prime Minister Modi's visit to the White House. As you know, they are already good friends. It was a very great opportunity for them to share their joint vision for the U.S.-India partnership and the opportunity for us to continue to strengthen that partnership. So the meetings that I've had here with different Indian government officials and intelligence officials really is set on that foundation of how we can continue to integrate, how we can continue to strengthen our relationship, not only, of course, in my area of intelligence, but we're looking at commerce and trade and defense and education. There's nothing but opportunity that I see here in the U.S.-India partnership.
Well, you spoke about commerce and trade. Of course, there's a lot of anxiety among Indians about the tariff regime. Could you tell us which way that's headed? And in the pecking order of the US-India relationship priorities, where does the tariff regime come in?
What I have heard from the Indian government officials that I've spoken to over the last few days, there is an opportunity here to see more potential for the strengthening of our economic relationship. And I'm glad to see that they're looking at it in a more positive light than just one that is focused in a negative way when we look at tariffs. Obviously, Prime Minister Modi is looking out for what is in the best interests of India's economy and the opportunities available for the people of India. Similarly, President Trump is doing the same for the United States, our economic interests and the interests of the American people. So what I see as a great positive is that we have two leaders who have common sense and who are looking for good solutions. This direct dialogue happening at the very top in both of our countries, but also at the different secretaries and the cabinet members, is going to be key to lay down what that path forward really looks like. And I personally am excited because there's keen interest in the private sector here in India and in the United States to seek out those opportunities and to maximize them.
Ma'am, there's a lot of attention, of course, in the Asia-Pacific region for your visit here and the earlier port of call. I wanted to ask you, what is your assessment of the Chinese threat in the Asia-Pacific region, and do you see India as a key player to counter China?
I've grown up in Hawaii and I've spent a lot of time in different countries across the Indo-Pacific region, and so understand at a deeply personal level the importance of this area for my country. And also, I think just as importantly, in understanding the complexities that exist within the histories of each of these countries, India and China, Vietnam, Thailand, the Philippines, the United States, of course. So what I appreciate about President Trump and his approach and some comments that I heard Prime Minister Modi make recently is they are very practical and they are pragmatic and are looking to strike